Nonprofit Consortium. Y'all are such a valuable resource for our nonprofit community and beyond. So thank you all for having me. It's a real honor. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen sharing set up here. So bear with me for just a moment while I get all my boxes and windows and assorted other screens organized here. Okay. And I do have the chat box pulled up. I definitely invite questions throughout this presentation today. We've got an hour. We're going to cram as much information into this hour as we possibly can. So do feel free to ask questions. I will be providing you, or I'll be providing Crystal with the slides and some handouts. So you'll get my contact information. You'll get links to all this information. You know, don't fret over having to hurriedly write notes, and I'm always happy to follow up with anybody. But yes, please feel free to ask chats, either I guess unmute yourself if you, I think we have that option, or drop them into the chat. So once again, my name is Morgan Ritchie-Baum. You can just call me Morgan. I had a professor in library school tell me one time you couldn't be a librarian unless you had a hyphenated last name. So at least I got that checked off. But I am the business and nonprofit librarian with Greensboro Public Library. I see some familiar names and some familiar faces. So I know some of you know me, but for those of you that don't really know what a business and nonprofit librarian is, well, at the end of the day, I'm a librarian. So I answer lots of different types of questions, like how does the Electoral College work? How does my cell phone work? I do those kinds of questions. But for the other half of my job, I work specifically with business and nonprofit information. And business and nonprofit research, which can really be complex, which I assume probably a lot of you have figured out by now. It does take some different skills, knowing what resources are good resources, where to get that good information. So I spend a lot of my time trying to be connected with our ecosystem here for both businesses and nonprofits, because as we know, resources aren't just physical resources or print resources or resources online. We have some great people resources here as well. So I try and stay connected with them so I can help you stay connected with them. Standard disclaimer, I'm a librarian. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not here to give you business advice or nonprofit advice or anything like that. What I am qualified to do, though, is to give you resource and research advice. That's why I got that degree in library science. You know, take all that in, but we'll definitely get you connected to some good information today. So in the next hour, I hope to cover these three areas. I want to introduce you, if you're not familiar with resources the library provides for your nonprofit, if you were not aware. And then we're going to talk about funding research with Foundation Directory Online. By and large, Foundation Directory Online, if it's not a resource you're already familiar with, is considered one of the premier resources for prospect and funding research. And it's one of the most valuable resources the library offers our nonprofit community. So I'll introduce you to some ways you can access that tool. There's some new ways you can access it remotely, which we're excited to hear about, and how you can research in that and how I can support you with that. And then we'll talk about some other research tools if we have time that can help you with things like demographic research, lifestyle research, issue research. So if you're putting together, designing a program, doing a grant proposal, and you need some of that support information, how the library may be able to support you with that. I also want to make a plug for some upcoming programs at the library. At the last Wednesday of the month, I will be teaching a course on Introduction to Grant Writing, very basic overview, but will give you a place, some ground to stand upon if grant writing is something that is intimidating for you. It's a good introduction, if I do say myself, a good introduction to the basics of grant writing. We also partner with the GTCC Small Business Center to help support their nonprofit seminar series. So that's ongoing in April, and you can register for that through the library's website or the Small Business Center's website. But Dr. Rideau of STC Consulting is doing a number of different webinars in April, everything from starting nonprofits to moving your nonprofit programs online. So there's some really great free classes available there. And then I will in May be doing a class on the library in your business, where we'll have more time to go into some of those databases that can help you with that demographic and lifestyle information. To sign up, just head on over to the library's website, greensborolibrary.org, and you'll find our calendar link there on the page, and you can see all of our upcoming programs and these programs as well and get signed up. Right now, everything's through Zoom, so you can register very similar to like you registered for this program today. And I will also try and drop the link to the calendar in the chat before we all leave today. Okay, so let's dive in and talk about the library and your nonprofit. So there's a lot of great information out there on resources like Google, but there's also, for lack of a better term, a lot of crap. So the library tries really hard to curate and provide access to some real quality resources to help you more effectively use your time when it comes to research. These are resources like databases, which we'll talk about, but also freely available websites that are out there. And you can find this great information primarily on our website or by talking to me directly. So there's really 4 areas the library can support your nonprofit. The printed word is not dead. It can still be very useful to have a resource guide in the form of a book. And at the Central Branch of the Greensboro Public Library, we offer a robust print collection of books primarily for nonprofits. It's what we call our Nonprofit Resource Center. If you've been in the Greensboro community for a little while, this used to live at our Glenwood branch. It's moved on over to the Central Branch. And this collection covers everything from starting and managing nonprofits, grant writing, sample grants, board management, branding, marketing. There's a book for everything. And just like the print collection, we have a robust digital collection, which if we have time, I will show you how to access today. So if you can't make it into the library is open. We're back to normal hours. Our only COVID restriction at this time is you are limited to 1 hour in our spaces. But if you're comfortable getting out and about with a mask on, we encourage you to stop by the Central Branch of the Greensboro Public Library to check out the Nonprofit Resource Center. I'm not going to go into too much detail about databases or the Foundation Information Network right now, because we're going to talk a lot more about that here in just a minute. But we do offer some really incredible tools to get you the information you need, and we'll dive into that a little bit. Let's talk real quickly about research assistance and referrals. I am very much of the mindset I want to work with you and I want to support you through your research needs. Now, that does not mean I do research for you, but I work with you to help you learn how to do research, because nobody knows your nonprofit better than you do. So I'm here to help enable you with the skills and tools you need to effectively do research. And if you have a question that I don't know the answer to, or I don't know a good resource for, like I said earlier, we try and stay connected to our community resources so we can make referrals to organizations such as the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Foundation Information Network. So what is that? So the Foundation Information Network basically means that we partner with an organization called Candid. Now, if you're not familiar with Candid, Candid used to be known as the Foundation Center. In 2019, they joined with GuideStar. Some of you may have GuideStar profiles. You may be familiar with that. They joined together to become Candid. They are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And together, they have over 88 years of experience and millions of data points collected about the nonprofit ecosystem across the world, the philanthropic industry, if you will. So, every year, millions of nonprofits are spending trillions of dollars. And what Candid does is they track that money, see where it's going, and they create very usable data from that. So we have tools like Foundation Directory Online, which we'll talk about today, that allows you to search over 140,000 funders and 12 million grants. You can increase your visibility with the funding community by creating or maintaining your GuideStar nonprofit profile. And then Candid Learning, formerly known as GrantSpace, offers lots of great free training and fundraising skills to really help level up your nonprofit. So we provide access to all of these tools, and we will dive into next, learning how to access these tools and how they work. And again, if you have any questions, I get kind of excited when I start talking about this stuff, and I start talking really fast because I'm from the North and it's just like something we do, I guess. So feel free to ask questions or pause me if it's getting intense. But let's talk about funding research with Foundation Directory Online. I'll refer to it as FDO because that's a mouthful from here on out. So as I said earlier, Foundation Directory Online, really what makes it such a special tool and why you've probably heard about it if you haven't already used it. It really provides some of the most comprehensive and accurate information on U.S. grant making activities, information on U.S. grant makers and their funding activities. And you have two ways to access this tool. We're going to take a look at both today. So if you are in the library, specifically the central branch of the Greensboro Public Library downtown, you have access for free with your Greensboro Public Library card to the professional version of Foundation Directory Online. As we're about to see, this is going to give you some very comprehensive information about funders for your organization. So you're going to get information on their funding activities. You're going to get information about grants they've already given. You're going to get information about organizations that have received those grants. Plus, you'll get access to their 990s, which we'll talk a little bit about. Now, it used to be in ye olden times, pre-COVID, that was it. That's all you could get access to. You could, of course, pay to access the database from home, but you know, if you can get it for free, right? So Candid recognized because of the pandemic, not everybody is in a position to venture out into the world at large. So they've offered now what's called something FDO Essentials. So FDO Essential basically allows you to access many of the features available to you through the professional version from home. Now, one recent update that has been made to this program that I'm not a super big fan of, and I've communicated this to Candid, so we'll see if any changes happen. But you basically, with a FDO Essential, you can sign up for free access to Foundation Directory Online Essentials for a 24-hour window every 30 days. It's basically a 24-hour pass. You get access to quite a bit of information about potential funders for your organization, but as you see, you are limited with some of the information you can get. So you're going to get a lot of information about the funder itself, but you're not going to get so much information about the grant recipient. And hopefully, once we take a look at it, this will make a little bit more sense to you. But I want to emphasize, I am your research partner in all of this. So I very regularly, if, for example, you know about an organization, a funder you're very interested in, and you want to get some more detailed information about them, email me. It is so easy for me to pull the profiles of funders and email them to you. And it's a service I am happy to do for you if you can't make it into the library or your 24-hour pass has run out. So because you can only come into the library for an hour, or you can only have 24 hours to access Foundation Directory Online Essential from home, it's a good idea to have some concept about what you're searching for when you're getting ready to search in Foundation Directory Online. So in preparation to search for funding in Foundation Directory Online FDO, you want to think about your project or whatever it is you're trying to get funding in kind of 4 areas. So first and foremost, you want to think about what are you trying to fund? Is it a specific program like a dance program or a food pantry or something like that? And then you want to think about what's the project's geographic focus. Now, this is not where your organization is based necessarily. So like, let's say you're based in High Point, but your project is going to serve all of Guilford County. So in that case, your project's geographic focus is Guilford County. Hopefully that makes sense. And Wendy, I will definitely send my contact information. And then you want to think about what kind of support is your organization looking for. Do you need, are you looking for cash, general operating support, or would gift cards work? Would in-kind support work? Would travel funds work? So you want to think about, what does the actual support look like? How is it going to be most useful? Because different funders provide different types of support, right? And then you want to think about who's being impacted by your program. So if this is a people-based program, right? So if it's a dance program, but it's really going to be focused for low-income teens between the ages of 12 and 16, getting that detail can really be helpful in identifying funders that really care about the work that your organization does. One thing that makes FDO so special is it really has the philosophy of they want you to be connected to a funder who really cares about the issue area or the topic area, the people group, whatever it is that you care about, and really help you form a relation, not just a funding relationship, but a relationship with them based on what you both care about. So let's say though, you want to do a little bit of research on your own. You don't have access to Foundation Directory Online, or for whatever reason, you want to do a little bit of pre-research. 990s can be a really useful source of information. And get a little bit of background noise there. Okay. 990s can be a really useful source of information. In fact, this is kind of pre-databases. This is how you used to do grant research, was going through 990 tax forms. That's not everybody's idea of a good time, but there's a lot of information in there. And luckily, there are some free online resources you have access to find information about a potential funder in 990s. Now, I really quickly want to go over just some quick tips and tricks for looking at 990s, because they can certainly supplement the information you're able to find in Foundation Directory Online, or if you're, again, not able to access Foundation Directory Online. And I want to call out a local organization. I believe they're out of Hickory, North Carolina, the organization Funding for Good. I think Steve and Crystal, I think they've done some programs for you all, and they are a paid service. I'm not necessarily saying, everybody go out and, take advantage of their services, but they offer just so much free stuff on their website too. They have a great YouTube channel. They have a great blog, and they, I want to meet them one day. I'm a total fangirl. So they have a great YouTube video called Using 990s Effectively, Quick Tips. And I've got the link for it there, but I've pulled out some of the information from that video. And we're going to look at a 990 here, but what we want to pay attention to first and foremost is that we see the letters PF in the upper left-hand corner of the 990. That just lets you know you're looking at a foundation. And then in page one of the hardest things I sometimes is about doing funding research is trying to figure out who do you call, who do you contact, where's the phone number at, where's the website at. So you can always find that though somewhere, usually on the 990, and that's typically going to be on page 1. And then on page 10 and part 15, this is where the good stuff is as it comes to funding research. You're going to find information about their grant process, which isn't always available, for example, on websites, if the foundation even has a website. You can find at least some basic information about what their process is. And then you can find out who did they give to and how much did they give. And this is really essential, for example, for using your time effectively when it comes to grant research, because you want to definitely find not only funders who care about the same thing that your organization does, but you want to find funders who are going to give to your organization in the type of way that you can most effectively use those resources, if that makes sense. So one great resource is the Candid 990 Finder. You do not need a library card to access this. You can simply Google Candid 990 Finder, and you'll be brought to this website, freely accessible to anybody. And from here, you can search for different organizations that might be on your radar for funding. So let's, for example, type in the Weaver Foundation. And let's narrow us down to North Carolina. All right, and let's find the most recent one, Weaver Foundation, North Carolina, 2017. And so here is their 990. So just to briefly go over some of those tips and tricks we just talked about. First and foremost, we can see up in the upper left-hand corner, we see that it's a 990 PF. So we know we're in the right place. And look, right there, like promised, is that phone number. So if you need to make a phone call to make that introduction, to learn about what their grant process is like, or maybe ask about what their RFP process is, you've got that right there to make those introductions. Let's scroll through some of this here, and let's go ahead and find part 10. Okay, part 10. Okay, now this is pretty common. So you'll get to part 10 or excuse me, part 15 on page 10 usually. Keep scrolling. So what is pretty common is when you get to the right section, you'll get there and you'll see it says, go to the addendum, see statement 11. And if we scroll all the way, let me move my screens here. This is where we can start to get information about who the organization is funding. So for example, this is right up here. We see who they have funded, the purpose of the grant or the contribution, and we can even start to see the amount. So this is some good preliminary information and very similar to the information you're going to find in Foundation Directory Online. FDO just makes it a little bit easier to research, but that information is out there without a database subscription. You just have to dig for it a little bit. And if you keep digging through these addendums, you will also come across the information about what their grant process is like. So all of this is to say, at the end of the day, even if you don't have a library database available to you, you certainly have some other opportunities to do the type of grant researching you would commonly do in Foundation Directory Online. Okay. So the moment of truth, let's actually take a look at this database we've been talking about for like the last 20 minutes. Okay. So to get access to this database, you want to head to the Greensboro Public Library's website. If you hover over services, first thing I'll point out is calendar. This is where you're going to find links to all of our upcoming events. But right here is our nonprofit section. The Funding Information Network, Foundation Directory Online, this is where you're going to access the different types of databases we provide. So Foundation Directory Online, if you're at the library, the essential version if you're at home, and we'll take a look at both of them. I also want to point out, though, those curated kind of lists of resources I was talking about earlier that are constantly updated. You can find nonprofit resources and research. So there's our good friend, the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium, and lots of other good stuff there. And then if you need to email me and you don't want to type out my super long name, you can just use the library nonprofit contact form and that information will be sent to me directly. But let's go ahead and take a look at Foundation Directory Online. So what we're looking at right now is the professional version of this database. And as I said earlier, if you've kind of gone through those 4 areas of getting ready to do some funding research, it becomes a lot easier to search in this database. This database recognizes that, not everybody spends all day, every day using databases like I do. So it makes searching really easy. So for example, if your nonprofit wants to set up a food pantry in Greensboro, or wants to find funding for a food pantry in Greensboro, you can simply type in food pantry in Greensboro, North Carolina, and go ahead and hit search. Now, what this database is going to do is it's going to take the information you typed in, and you see up here in the top, it says showing results for. Now, before we get excited and we look at all this different stuff down here at the bottom, let's go ahead and click edit, because the database has basically matched what you have typed in with some keywords. And they may be spot on, but they could be off the mark, okay? So subject area looks pretty good. Geographic focus looks good. Program support, I'm gonna go ahead and take that out for support strategy for the moment, just because I wanna make this a little bit more general and just see what's out there. So right now we have 9 grant makers. Let's search again. And that upped us, because we took program support out, that upped us to 11 grant makers. And let's say our food pantry is really for families specifically, maybe not for individuals, but for families. Let's try that. Ooh, that dropped us to 0. So let's take that out. And let's look at our results we have here. Now I'm going to run the same exact search in Foundation Directory Online Essential, just so you get a sense of what's available for you at home. But before we do that, let's take a look at what this information provides you. First and foremost, the information is basically broken down into 4 categories technically, but 3 categories that we really care about. First and foremost, this is showing 11 grant makers that between the years of 2003 and 2021 have given to nutrition programs or food banks that focus on Greensboro, North Carolina. So we see Weaver Foundation, which we just looked at the top there, and we could explore these results a little bit more. Next, we actually see the individual grants, right? So these are the organizations. We can see the recipients here, who gave them, and we actually can see when they were given and what the primary subject was, and we'll take a look at that. And then the recipients as well. One reason recipients, being able to search the recipients and get some information about them, is you can see who else is funding them. So maybe your organization does work similar to Out of the Garden Project. Maybe you're looking at partnering with Out of the Garden Project for something. So you can get a sense of historically what their funding relationships look like. That may either lead to new prospects or give you a better sense of what a partnership could bring to both organizations. But let's go ahead and take a look at a grant maker profile so you can get a sense of what information is found here. So we're looking at the Weaver Foundation, and right off the bat, Foundation Directory Online definitely wants to use your time effectively. So it has highlighted basically 3 criteria to help you make a quick decision if it's worth investigating this particular funder any further. So first and foremost, you get a sense of what subject areas they're actually funding. So as long as what you're looking to fund kind of falls in, like usually their top 3, that's a good sign. I usually say like that's a check. We can see they're funding a ton in North Carolina. So if your organization is in North Carolina, check. And then how big are the grants? And again, this is why it's a good idea before you even begin to do your prospect or funding research, you have a sense of what you're actually trying to fund, right? So you know how much money you're actually looking for. Because if you're looking for a $1 million grant, well, Weaver Foundation might not be the best bet for you. But if you're looking for some funding under, between $5,000 and $25,000, well, they have certainly given a number of grants in that space, right? So if that works for what you're trying to do, you can say, that's a check, 3 checks. This looks like a great possible connection. So let's investigate it a little bit further. So from here, we can see who they've given grants to. They're organized by year. So we can see one of the last grants they gave was to Final Call Outreach Ministries. I'm just clicking on that, and this is taking me so I can see a little bit of information about this grant. So support, typo, support food pantry projects, how much the grant was for. You get a sense of who they were funding. Maybe you want to learn a little bit more about Final Call Outreach Ministry, so I can click on the recipient profile. And now I get a sense of, okay, so they're receiving a lot of money from public charities, a lot of money from independent foundations. We can see that they've received 2 grants actually from Weaver Foundation, and just get some basic information about them. I'm going to go back to the Weaver Foundation's profile. This is this funding interest area is really great for putting together an LOI, letter of introduction, or even putting together a grant proposal, because these are keywords, if you will, that are great to kind of stick in to those proposals to really match with the funder's interest, right? It's all about creating that relationship with the funder. So hopefully it's a lasting relationship. Support strategies and transaction types are also really important. So you can make sure they're providing funding in such a way that you can actually use it. Application and RFPs. So obviously at the end of the day, if you decided Weaver Foundation was definitely an organization you wanted to approach for funding for your organization, the most important thing to do is to check out their website or make a phone call or see if you have a connection. And I'll show you some ways FDO can help facilitate this. But FDO does try and pull some of this information for information purposes only. And I just really want to stress that because at the end of the day, this is a tool. The next step is really verifying any information you find with the organization, the foundation directly. But this is a planning tool to really help you prioritize who you're approaching. So, you know, you can at least see if you at least have most of the information they might require. Giving limitations is really important, right? So are you a fraternal or a religious organization? Maybe Weaver Foundation isn't the best opportunity for you, right? Are you looking for funding for conferences or travel or video productions? Again, maybe that lowers them on your list if that's something you're looking for. We know in the nonprofit community, it's all who you know. So the who's who can be really important. This basically will list information about officers. So maybe, you know one of these individuals, maybe somebody on your board knows one of these individuals and can help make that all important first introduction to help facilitate that relationship. And then the contact information. So, website, phone number, EIN number, if you were going to need that for anything, it's all available right there. So let's get back to our search results, because the last thing I want to highlight here before we take a look at what this would look like on the essential version, which again is the version you can access from home today with your Greensboro Public Library card. Let's say you only have 15 minutes to run into the library, put together a quick search, and then you got to go to another meeting. FDO makes it really easy to send all these results to yourself or to your board members or to your volunteer that's helping you out with grant research by simply selecting the profiles. And then right up here at the top, on the right-hand corner of some tools, you can download the profiles of all of these organizations. You can download them 10 at a time, or you can send a quick Excel spreadsheet. So you get the most pertinent information downloaded. And again, you can either email that to somebody or you could save it on a flash drive and come back to it. But those profiles we just looked at, they all essentially organized the same way. The information will obviously just change from organization to organization. So let's take a look at the essential version. So this is FDO Essential. You can see it looks pretty similar to what we've already seen on the professional version, but some things to point out here. So there's my day pass. So I logged in yesterday to make sure this would work. So I only have 7 hours left on this email that I have created an account for. When you log into the essential version, it'll first ask for your library card. After you type in your library card, you'll just create an account with an email address and password. Now you didn't hear it from me, but if you have multiple email addresses, that works. But again, you didn't hear that from me. Okay, so if you need to maybe have longer than 24 hours, maybe just have some volunteers helping you out and they create their own accounts. Okay, that's a hot tip. But you can run a search very much the same way. So let's do, again, food pantry in Greensboro, North Carolina. So first and foremost, we can see up here at the top, we do get the edit option. So we can stretch this out a little bit, play around with some of the filters. I'm going to take out program support like I did in the professional version. And so here we go, we get some grant makers here. Now, one thing I want to point out, you can see, right, we can't see the grants and we can't see the recipients, but we can still see the grant makers. So again, this is a good way to kind of get started. And if you need that more detailed information, that's when you can look on the 990, or you can reach out to me directly and I can send you the full profile from the professional version, or of course you can stop into the library. So let's take a look at the Weaver Foundation, which we also looked at. So we can see these categories look the same like they do in the professional version. But what we're missing is we don't see who they've given grants to. We don't see how much those grants were for, and we don't have any detailed information about the awardees. Again, you can get that from 990s, or you can reach out to me, but you're still getting information about the organization, about the application process. You have access to their 990s right on the page here, the who's who, and the contact information. So again, this is all available to you from home with your library card. But again, you only have 24 hours to have access to that from home. So in a nutshell, that is Foundation Directory Online. Now I want to take a quick pause here before we scoot on over to look at some other databases to see if there's any questions. You must be feeling pretty good about it so far. So somebody in the chat direct messaged me to ask, they don't live in Greensboro, but can they get a Greensboro library card? So this individual lives in Winston-Salem, so I've got some really good news. So yes, you can get a Greensboro Public Library card, even if you live in Forsyth County. So Greensboro has borrowing agreements essentially with all the counties that touch Guilford County. So if you live in any of those counties, you are eligible to come and to get a Greensboro Public Library card. You just physically have to show up here, okay? The other thing to know, though, is most of the larger public library systems, including the Forsyth County Public Library System, also offer access to Foundation Directory Online. I will tell you, Forsyth County Public Library has a fabulous business and nonprofit librarian named Jody Stanley, or not Jody Stanley, excuse me, Jody Lohman. Jody Stanley works for the city of Greensboro. Jody Lohman, and she's wonderful, and she very much acts in the same way that I do. So you've got lots of options. You can either get a library card at a library that offers access to Foundation Directory Online, or you can come check it out with us. So that was a really good question. Oh, and thank you, Richard. That's very nice of you to say. Okay, so in the kind of 15 minutes we have left, I do want to talk about some of the resources that can help you with some of that demographic and lifestyle, and even some of your funding research. And I want to call out two databases specifically, Simply Analytics and Data Axle Reference Solutions. I'm going to start with Data Axle, which used to be known as Reference USA. Some of you may have encountered it when it was called that. But both of these databases, good news, you can use from home as much as you want. So you're not limited in terms of how much you can access. The only thing to be aware of, you do need that library card. And Simply Analytics, because that is new to us, we only allow 2 users to use the database simultaneously. So what that means is, like, if all of you jump off after this call and log into Simply Analytics, only 2 of you are getting in, and then you'll have to wait your turn until somebody hops off. But if this is a tool that is helpful and useful for your organization, I encourage you to let me know that. That definitely helps with our resource cycles. So we want to make sure we are providing tools that are actually useful to our community at large. So let's actually take a look at these databases so we can see what they do. To access these databases, you can either, you first, of course, want to head on over to the library. You can either do resources by title under our research tab, or I do have a section for our business databases where these databases also live. They're organized alphabetically. So let's take a look at Data Axle first. So I'm going to warn you, Data Axle might creep you out a little bit, only because it has a lot of information about you, possibly, and about organizations themselves. So how does Data Axle work? Data Axle collects information from a lot of different sources. So from like the Yellow Pages, for example, Secretary of State filings, they collect that information. But let's say you, either for yourself as an individual or for an organization, has signed something that says the information may be shared with a third party. Chances are Data Axle, its parent company, is purchasing that data and putting this into the database. A little creepy, yes, but depending on how you want to use your research powers for good, right? It can be super helpful. So because it gets so much different types of information, you can see it's categorized it. So one thing I want to look at right now is US consumers and lifestyles. So we know that an organization cannot survive on grant funding alone, right? In fact, most nonprofits rely on individual donors to make up the majority of their budgets. And finding ways to do outreach to individual donors, you're always looking for new ideas. So Data Axle can be one tool in your tool belt. I'm gonna ignore the quick search for right now. This would essentially assume I know who I'm looking for. So if you have a long lost love that you're trying to rekindle a romance with and you want to look them up, you can certainly do that. But again, use your research powers for good. What I'm more interested in is putting together a prospect list. So let's go to advanced search. Now you can get overwhelmed with how many options you have. So let me break this down for you. And this also applies for Simply Analytics. You want to go into this tool, because that's what it is. A database is a tool with some concept of what you're looking for. So I like to break that down into a what and a where. So what is like, what kind of individual are you looking for? And your where is geographically, where ideally should they be located? And if you can at least get those two pieces of information submitted down, it makes researching in this tool a whole lot easier. So first and foremost, probably easiest for all of us is to pick a geographic location. So we can see on the left-hand side, we got lots of different geographies we can work with. So let's just search for Greensboro. All right, so there's Greensboro, North Carolina. And an important next step is that anytime we add any little bit of data, we want to update our count so that our records are getting smaller. Our record count is getting smaller. So next is our what kind of information are we looking for? So I'm going to click on lifestyles here. And I can already see one of the lifestyle choices is charitable donor. So essentially what this is saying are these are individuals, we're about to find individuals in Greensboro who have a high likelihood of being charitable donors. Now, we have some other lifestyle information here that could probably help us narrow it down a little bit. So right now, if you can see down here at the bottom, it says currently searching records that match any selected interest. So for example, maybe my organization works with pets, right? So the way it is right now, it would either find people who are donors or people who like pets, not a combination of both. We want to search a combination of both. So I'm going to show more options, and I want to only look at records that do both. They care about giving philanthropically, and they care about animals. So let's update our count. Now, I can assure you there's definitely more than 21 people in Greensboro that do that, but this is a good place to start. This is a super specific list. So let's view our results. Okay, So these are actual names and addresses of individuals who have a likelihood of being charitable donors and people that care about pets. So this is super easy to, like, if you're doing like a mail campaign, for example, you can download these results, get out your Avery labels and print some address stickers and send off your promotional materials to them. Phone numbers are occasionally included here, but I always like to make this disclaimer. Remember, I'm not your lawyer or anything like that, so don't get in trouble. These numbers are not cross-referenced against the do not call list, so don't go making random phone calls. You might get in trouble, and I don't want you to get in trouble. But you at least have some, and you can get a better sense of, where are these people located, right? Where should you be doing your marketing efforts as it relates to connecting with individual donors who care about these areas? So that, in a real quick nutshell, is Data Axle. I want to very quickly show you our second database, and then I'll open the floor for questions. Again, I know this is a lot of information really quickly, always remember you can reach out to me directly, and I will be happy to go over this information with you. All right, so the last resource I wanted to show you was Simply Analytics. So let's go to our business databases and click on Simply Analytics. So Simply Analytics is a great tool for finding lifestyle information and demographic information. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my account directly. You can create an account. It's totally free. And the good news here is it saves all of your information for you. And we're going to give it a chance to load here. It's probably going to be difficult because it knows I only have 10 minutes left. Come on, database. I'll give it a hot second here before I get the shepherd's hook out and pull it off. Come on. Because it knows I'm talking about it. So watch, there's going to be like 2 other people already on it, and I'm not even going to be able to show you my own database. Try one other thing here. There we go. All right. So much like Reference USA, or excuse me, Data Axle, this database works with that what and where mentality, right? So you want to go into it, knowing 2 pieces of information, where you're looking for this information, and what kind of information are you looking for. So maybe I've got a grant project that I'm doing, or a grant proposal that I'm working on, and I need to get some basic demographic information. So I need some basic demographic information about Greensboro. And I don't know about you, but the Census Department has changed. A lot of times you're grabbing this information from the census, and the census has changed how it's distributing information, and it's not the most user-friendly. So this can be a good, if you don't enjoy looking at the census website. I actually enjoy it, but if you don't enjoy it, that's totally understandable. This is a good way to get this information. For right now, I'm going to create this project without seed variables, because what I want you to see is you can get a lot of really great different types of reports. I want to look at a quick report. And what a quick report does is it gives me a lot of basic demographic information for my selected location. So in this case, Greensboro. So I get a breakdown of population, age, race, income level, education, language spoken at home, citizenship, housing, and a whole lot more. Let's say I'm working on a project, though, that maybe is seeking to deal with childhood poverty, right? So I'm going to look at a ranking table, and I'm going to come over to our data. And I can see there's a data category for poverty. And now I can look at percentage of children under the age of 5 living in poverty in Greensboro. And it's actually going to break that down for me. So I can actually see 27406 has a high high percentage of children under the age of 5 living in poverty. So this is a great statistic if that's like an issue area for you. And this is just an example. Hopefully you can see on the left-hand side, you've got lots of different categories to work with here, from health to income to household to family type to education. This is a great place to get those statistics and data that can really make a meaningful program, right? And help you really identify the areas that you need to direct your nonprofits issues on. Okay, so with that said, that is everything I wanted to show you today. I know that was a lot. There's my information on the screen, but please, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them for the last 6 or 7 minutes that we have here today.
Good morning, Morgan. I just want to say that this was fast and furious, was really effective, and it was great. You're a great teacher.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. This was really helpful. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and being willing to take care of our questions separately if need be. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for those kind words. Very appreciated.
Hi, my name's actually Michaela. I'm sitting in for Jan.
Hi, Michaela.
Hi, I agree. You've been enormously helpful. Thank you so much. This may be a little bit more of a grant writing than research question, but I'm pretty new to all of it and wondering about citations. So let's say I use Simply Analytics to get some data and then I incorporate that data in my request. Do you have any guidance on how to cite?
Yes. Oh my gosh, you just made my like librarian heart explode. So yes, yeah, we love citations. So yes, we can send you, in fact, my mentor is actually the business librarian at UNCG. And the only reason I mention that is because he's put together a really great citation guide specifically for different types of databases like Simply Analytics. So that's a great question to reach out to a librarian about, and we can send you those resources. The other thing I will point out to you is in Simply Analytics, you have access to the metadata, right? So that's just a super nerdy way of saying you have access to the information about like, where is this information actually coming from, right? So I've just clicked on like this poverty status by age, for example, and I can view the metadata. And this is telling me this is coming from the American Community Survey, and that can certainly go a long way for doing your citations, depending on how you want to do your citations, right? Sometimes the American Community Survey says blah, 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 but you might actually want to put like an official citation at the end of your report, which I think would be great. And we can get you connected on all the kinds of details and ins and outs on how to do that. So that's a great question, Michaela.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Sarah.
Morgan, thank you so much again for partnering with us on this. It's been a wonderful, informative session. And even though you said I didn't have to write, my hand is now cramped from
Sorry.
And thank you also for making yourself available to us for additional questions and sharing your contact information. We also appreciate everybody being with us today. You heard the announcement of Morgan's events coming up. When was the grant? You had a grant writing event, I believe.
Yeah. So I'm going to drop that in the chat, the link to that event. That's going to be on the 28th at 2 o'clock. I usually record those events as well. So even if you can't make it on the 28th at 2 o'clock, do register for it because I will send out the recordings and all the handouts and the slides to everybody who registers. So if you can't make it, I do certainly still encourage you. And I do these workshops on a rotating basis. So if you want to attend live, you can usually catch me the next time around.
That sounds like a good next step to go from grant finding to grant writing. So thank you so much. Everyone, it's a beautiful day today. Enjoy it. Morgan, thanks again.
Yep.
And we will see you at our next event. Y'all have a great afternoon. Take care.